Are you free? Free to choose what you do and make decisions? Or are you an NPC, unable to decide anything for yourself? Have you ever thought that you are controlled by something or by someone? What did you have for breakfast this morning? Was it delicious? Was it one to forget? Whatever it was, you didn't choose to have it. You might think you did, but in actuality you didn't. And though you might have had the conscious awareness of choice, porridge or toast, coffee or tea, and remember, making an active decision, the fact that you could not have selected any other option, any decision you think you might have made, was simply an illusion. Like when you decided to watch this video instead of doing something useful. But what if I told you that I can tell which option you're going to pick 300 milliseconds before you actually make a decision with 100% accuracy? In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet, a psychologist, used an EEG to show that you can read and tell that somebody is about to move 300 milliseconds before they decided in their conscious mind to actually move. This means that before we decide that we want to move our bodies, it's already been decided for us in our subconscious, and we only think that we made the decision ourselves after it's already been made. In a similar study, participants were asked to press one of two buttons while looking at a clock with a random sequence of letters on a screen. With the use of fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, they discovered that two of the participants' brain regions showed what button they would press 7 to 10 seconds before they consciously made the decision. The results of this research only proves one thing. A few seconds before you pick coffee or tea, your brain makes that decision for you. It is after the decision has been made, deep in our subconscious, that our brain becomes aware of it, and we are convinced that we take part in the process of making that decision. Because the brain is like the heart. We don't tell it what to do, it just does. But what is a free will by its own definition? What does it mean? I would say it's yours and my ability to decide something by ourselves, which means that our future can be shaped by our actions, which means that you are responsible for them, which is the basis of our legal and moral system. Now, there are a lot of dimensions for this topic, such as moral, psychological, and biological, but let's focus on the most essential one. Is free will even possible? Two main philosophical divisions are debating about this. We won't remember their name anyway, so let's use our own words. The first division, or the no free will division, claims that any thought, any action that you might have is entirely dependent on your past or on the physical laws, which leaves no room for any choice. In other words, any action or even thought is predetermined. But how exactly is it predetermined? And does it mean that there is such thing as fate? You see, whoever you are, you have a physical body, which is made of cells, which are made of proteins, which are made of atoms, which are made of particles like electrons and protons. So basically, you are a collection of particles that are in constant motion, much like a cloud of energy and matter. And particles have no freedom, no motivation, no will. They just blindly follow the laws of physics, which are quite deterministic. This means that all the things that happen the way they do is because of the other things that came before. If you play soccer and hit a ball at specific speed and angle, the laws of physics dictate how the ball will travel through the air. Factors like speed, spin, and wind resistance all influence its trajectory. The precise interaction of these forces determines whether the ball will soar over the goal, curve into the net, or be intercepted by an opponent. Does essentially the ball have the free will on how it will travel? No, it will just follow the laws of physics. Do you think you are any different? On a microscopic level, things happen very much like that. Actions and reactions affects all the particles in the universe, creating a chain of causal effects that extends throughout time, from the past to the future. Things happen making other things happen. Now imagine that you are an NPC in someone's supercomputer. It would mean that this supercomputer would be able to apply the deterministic laws of physics, and just like our ball from soccer, should be able to predict what all the particles in existence would be doing until the end of time. You may feel like you make decisions, but you're actually on autopilot. The motion of the particles that make up your brain cells that made you watch this video were decided 14 billion years ago. You're just in the room when it happens. You're only witnessing how universe unfolds itself in real time. This would mean that there is kind of fate and that you're not free to decide anything.
Fate, it seems, is not without a sense of irony.
The free will camp would ask, can this be true if we take the quantum mechanics into consideration? Quantum processes are random, not deterministic, and can't be predicted with total certainty. In the quantum soccer field, our ball can go randomly, left or up, or wherever it decides to. Its behavior isn't set by what was before, but rather decided randomly in real time. But for no free will camp, this concept doesn't weaken their stance. They argue that since the quantum processes are random, they don't allow you to consciously make decisions. If there is randomness in the things that make up your brain and body, then these random processes make decisions for you. Imagine an electron could move left or right. If it moves left, it may trigger electric signals in your neurons, setting off a neural process that leads to a complex chain of events that makes you watch a YouTube video. If it moves right, the outcome might be cleaning your room. Even though this chain is extremely complex, it doesn't mean you have control over it. So perhaps your fate wasn't set in stone at the Big Bang, but it is determined in this specific time. The critical point is that it's not determined by you. You have no influence here, no free will. Except the free will camp would say, this is a really bad way of thinking about our universe. We can't think that everything around us could be broken down into tiny particles and the physical laws that guide them. This perspective can make physics seem like the ultimate science. But here's the catch. Not everything can be explained by just looking at the particles. One major example is emergence. The idea that when tiny little particles come together to form these new properties and behaviors that weren't there before. Think of it like individual cells forming a living organism, or different notes combining to create a melody. These new qualities are more than just the sum of their parts, and can't be understood by studying each piece in isolation. A simple example of emergence is a school of fish. Imagine a single fish swimming in the ocean. On its own, it's just a fish moving around. But when hundreds of fish swim together, in a coordinated way, they can form a moving, swirling pattern that looks like a single giant creature. No single fish is leading the others. Instead, each fish follows simple rule, like stay close to my neighbors and move in the same direction. When they all do this together, they create something new, a dynamic, organized shape that helps protect them from predators. This large pattern or behavior emerges from the group of fish, even though it doesn't exist in one fish alone. Emergence occurs at all levels of reality, and reality seems to be organized in layers. Atoms, molecules, tissues, organs, you, society. Put many things in one layer together, and they'll create the new, next layer up. Every time they do, entirely new properties emerge. One atom can handle information, but many of them together can form a DNA molecule. Molecules are not alive, but many of them can form a cell, and cells are alive. With each jump up the complexity ladder, the rules of what's possible change. This is where the reductionist view, which tries to explain everything by breaking it down into the most basic elements, doesn't quite work. While you can explain living organisms with cells, cells with molecules, and molecules with atoms, the story breaks down when you try to start from tiny particles like quantum particles and work your way up. You can't understand things like galaxies by studying quantum mechanics or human psychology by looking at quarks. Reality isn't just a stack of layers. Each layer is mostly independent. While things in one layer can influence each other, they don't usually affect the layers that are above or below. For example, to understand how your organs work, you don't need to look at quarks. Similarly, to understand politics, you don't need to be studying cells. To explain the things within a particular layer, you need to focus within that layer. Now, proponents of free will argue that trying to explain it strictly through the lens of determinism and the fundamental laws of nature is a dead end. It's like trying to explain the formation of galaxies by studying your digestive system. This reductionist thinking has shaped science for a long time, but it runs into trouble with emergence. So when it comes to free will, perhaps we shouldn't be trying to explain it with particles and quantum mechanics. The real question is, Which layer of reality matters when it comes to free will? Just like the example with fish, this isn't something a single molecule creates. No single cell in your brain wants to watch a YouTube, but when you look at the layer above, your brain, made up of about 80 billion neurons, it starts to make sense. It's on this level that all the aspects of your personality and consciousness emerge. This is where you emerge. Your thoughts, your decisions, your feelings, your fears, and your dreams. We don't really understand how or why this happens, but in this layer of reality, you play a role at decision-making process. You aren't just a passive observer, you're actively participating in the unfolding of events in your brain. You have a say in how things unfold here, and that's where the free will can be found. This is the perspective that some people from the free will camp would support. At least for now, it seems that the universe is not that simple. But even if we don't have free will, it's not clear what that changes for practical purposes. You and I, we humans, on subjective basis, feel like we have free will, and your decisions are yours to make. As long as we are not sure either way, and it feels like we're making the decisions, what does it matter if a non-existent supercomputer could have calculated the future at the Big Bang? Or if quantum stuff all the way down randomly nudges your cells one way or the other? Free will that feels free will for us is good enough. In any case, now you can decide what to do next. Get some stuff done or watch more of my videos. It's your decision, probably.